Hey there guys, it's me, Gabriel, coming to you with a little video. Thought we do the YouTube thing to immortalize this message, if you will. So on Facebook, again, after every video, the Facebook Live stuff's fun, but it's more transient. But with this, I wanted to talk about the beauty of the Beatitudes. As I feel like, that first paragraph of chapter 5 of St. Matthew, is probably, I would say, one of the most profound statements of Jesus. I mean, right there. I mean, I think that is, in all honesty, the whole Sermon on the Mount, I think, is really the crux and epitome of Christ's teachings. But I feel like if you needed even more of a focal point of it all, I think you could look no better place than the Beatitudes. And I wanted to, if you will, to kind of maybe walk through it and see what we can find. So, because I think when you look at it, it's really a beautiful thing, because you see it as this certain cycle of thought. You start off, poor in spirit. You're in the dark. You're poor because you've invested poorly in your thought of what matters. Life and matter, life in the body, almost kind of nihilistic, that nothing really matters kind of thing, or that you don't matter. But yet, there's this beautiful correlation where he says, because Jesus starts off, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. That's an odd thing to say, because if we look at then verse 10, where he finishes things off with, blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Both from the beginning, when you seem to be in destitute, separate from God, yours is still the kingdom of heaven. This is still your hope. This is still yours. Heaven is still everywhere, because heaven isn't at hand. It's within. It's everywhere. And even when you have made it to the end, it's just as much as yours as it was before. So heaven was always yours. It was always there. You just didn't. It's the shifting of perception, and I think that's what we see with this unfoldment in each step. Because the next thing, blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. And it's this beautiful kind of like juxtaposition. When you mourn, you'll be comforted. When you're meek, you'll inherit the earth. That's a fascinating dynamic. And we'll give me a second. Stick with me here, but we'll get to that in a second. But blessed are the poor. Blessed are they that mourn. When you realize that, I think it's when you become unsatisfied with the way life is. You just kind of feel like you're not. It's kind of like, if you've ever seen the movie Spirited Away. Spoiler alert! At the end, near the end, they're holding the gold, and then the gold just turns to like mud or dirt or something, and so it's like all that glitter and gold just doesn't seem to have the same kind of shine. And there's kind of that, and especially if it's in a crisis and you realize, like, man, there's like in a crisis of identity, and it just feels like your world's falling apart. You're mourning, you're suffering, you're experiencing this anguish. It's like, what's happening? You're crying out. Even if you're like an atheist and you're crying out, you're like, man, life isn't going good. It just seems like it's rough. And yet there's that comfort, because, hey, look, we go back to the beginning. Because there's the kingdom of heaven. They have access to that. All of us have access to it, because it's all around us. I think when we mourn, it's sort of a wake-up call. There's got to be a better way, And so then when we go to the next part, I think it's a beautiful next step. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. I always love to look up the root words, because nowadays, you look at something like the King James Bible, or just the different versions of the Bibles in the English translation, sometimes they don't necessarily get to the real core of it. It's kind of like love, for instance. There's different kinds of love. Like Jesus, when he's talking to Peter in John, the book of John, he talks about, do you love me? He's speaking from a more agape kind of love. There's many different kinds, like philia, ludos, just a whole bunch of different kind of loves. But agape love, it's like, but you don't get that just from the word love in and of itself. I can love pizza, but that's not the kind of love I have for like my mother or a friend. So different kinds of love. But anyways, I was looking at the word meek, because meek, I think the word meek or humble, I think there can be a tendency to think that as a negative connotation, that they think less of themselves. They think, oh man, I'm no good. There's that kind of, yeah, false sense of humility. But the meek, um, it actually comes from another word, like Greek translation kind of thing, mansuetude. Mansuetude, it kind of sounds like some surfer dude type of thing, but it delves into tameness, mildness, gentleness. Um, it can actually, um, the state, let's see, the noun of state from post participles stem from mansucere, sorry I'm butchering all this, to tame, literally to accustom to the hand. So if you think about it, the hand of God, the body of God, in a sense, the meekness is you're in a sense, not say conforming, but you're aligning yourself. You're yielding to the divine, you're yielding your thought to that harmony of the divine mind in a beautiful way. There is this kind of, sometimes I think, a giving up of the old way, but that's where the morning came. That's where the certain, the churning, if you will, the chemicalization. There's like this realizing there's something more, and they're seeking out. Actually, that brings us to the next part. But before we go any further, I think when you're open, when you're open to God, when you're open to whatever it may be, you are able to, that openness and interest, if nothing else, being just open. Okay, God, it helps empty you, if you will. Before you can be filled, you have to first be emptied. And it is sometimes when we are at our lowest that we are the most open to change. And I think then, so that's where I think they shall inherit the earth, because now you're open for forgiveness. You're open. That's really where the end goal for a lot of this is. And it's not necessarily, forgiveness isn't the end, but the means to get you there. And we'll keep on moving on though. But so then you're hungry. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. So now you got a seeking mind, because you saw what didn't work. Now you're moving into the next step. You're like, okay, what, and you're looking and you're searching, and often that searching and looking, that prayer, see, that's where then that comes into prayer, because now you're making your desire different. When what you desire, what you believe, will be done unto thee, as Jesus says to the centurion, paraphrasing, mind you. What Jesus said, as ye believe, so is it unto you. And very likewise, you're hungry. What you hunger after will inevitably come into fruition. And so now you and if you're, especially as he puts the point that thirst after righteousness, and you shall be filled. So before, what was filling you up really wasn't doing it for you. Where it wasn't, it wasn't satisfying. And so then we get to the next part. But let's see the true sense of righteousness, because some people can get mistaken about the whole sense of righteousness. What is a righteous man and things like that? He goes to church every weekend and he tithes and he does all this stuff. It's like, that's not necessarily a righteous person, because if we look at the next part, what really brings you into righteousness, if you want to call it such a thing, is, blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. And then if we look at mercy, I was looking at this too, because looking at the root words, like I was saying, it can be always such a great time. So it talks about, one thing I thought was, it's the, I guess, showing kindness to the helpless and those from whom no requital can be expected. So you're not expecting anything in return. Think about, the power of mercy, and really which envelops forgiveness, compassion, these things, empathy, that gentleness leads to compassion and mercy. So it's that's what leads into it. So by having that mercy, by giving that, you are in turn going to then receive it. It may not be from that person per se, but you're putting that out, and it's just like a sonar. What you put out is going to come to you. And so that's a really powerful thing right there, folks. And there is a strength behind forgiveness. The world would think of forgiveness as, many might try to have you believe that forgiveness is a form of weakness. You have to compromise because you weren't able to win that bout with that person. But really, there is something so powerful for forgiveness. And forgiveness to the point where you are not expecting anything in return. You're just being. Think about it. Jesus says, God lets the sun shine on the good and the bad, the rain on the just and the unjust. He just is. He's gonna do his thing, and it's love. And that's the thing, is like to be able to be like, I'm just going to forgive. I'm going to let this slate be clean. I'm not going to hold these things against you, not because you're going to give me something in return, but just to be it, you know? So it's almost like what they do is of no avail. Think about how powerful you are. That's where that inheriting the earth is all about, because now you are in such a way. They can't do anything against you. Think about it, you know? You can only get mercy back because that's all you're given, you know, because that's the thing. It doesn't matter what they do anymore because you're on your grind, you're on your thing, you're on the mercy grind, you know. You're not about, well, what if they, you're not making a relationship based off of conditions anymore. You're just, I am just gonna be me, because I know forgiveness can sometimes be tough, especially if you're real salty. If you're really, you know, feeling a certain kind of way, then yeah, it can be tough. You know, how can you have gratitude for someone when you hate them at the same time? You can't. So the Beatitudes are the steps to get us to the point to where we can be forgiving. Not to say you have to like or want or approve of the kind of way they're acting, but you can accept them and you can let that thought be. You can let that person be as they are, you know, and just focusing more on your values of forgiveness, of mercy, of compassion, and being able to just loving them as you are, and not being so caught up in what they need to do, and letting God in a lot of ways kind of take care of the heavier lift, you know, moving the things where they will be, but just focusing. If you're doing love, if you're being loving, if you're being merciful and gentle unto others and compassionate, then you know you're in your right place and you're living your best life, if that's the kind of life that you're living. It makes life so much easier. You know, the world becomes so much more bright when we're forgiving and when we're loving. And that brings us to the next part. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. God's all around us right now. He's right here. Look, don't you see him? You know. And it's when you have that pure, that what brings what a pure mind is one that's merciful. So if you're forgiving, that's why a forgiven world, when you can forgive the world and all the inhabitants, all the people within your life, especially the people you know and all that stuff, when you can do that, boom, then that's it. You are seeing God right now because you're seeing him with the right eyes and the right mind. You're seeing him as he sees you, with forgiveness, with compassion. And it's not about whether you're worthy or not worthy, because you are worthy. You know, because it doesn't matter about that. It's not necessary to be this or make that or become this or that or anything in between, because it's a recognition of who you are, and then letting that light shine. As Christ is the light, so are we to be able to be that unto others. And that's beautiful, folks. That's so awesome. And that brings us to the next part. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. So as you recognize your divine right and liberty of who you are, you come into that because you are being a peacemaker. If you're being forgiving, if you're being compassionate, it's going to bring about the greatest joy. And that joy, that light, is going to be able to let you be a peacemaker. That's the natural outcome of the life you're going to live. I mean, think about those people who are just kind of bitter and jaded and cynical. And look at the life that they have. Look at their relationships or lack thereof. You can just see it by it's not like, oh, there's some people who are really loving and compassionate and they just have shit lives. No, man, like you can see by their lives. Look at their fruits, you know? Judge, look to the fruits of their life. You don't pick, grapes of thistles and figs of thorn, or grapes of thorns and figs of thistles. By their fruits you will know them. So like if they've got those great relationships, those relationships will come. I mean, I can't tell you how many relationships I have been able to restore, that where I had that ancient hate were restored from a very present and peaceful love, bringing about that healed relationship. And I think that has to be one of the most beautiful experiences where an ancient hate becomes a present love. That's beautiful. And we come by that by being peacemakers, by being, and we recognize us as those children, as ourselves as children of God. It's not something that you weren't before and now you are, but you always were, and now you're remembering who you are because you are being forgiving, you are being loving, and you're not worrying about what somebody else is doing or what have you. You're just allowing yourself to be. And from that being of who you are, brings us up to the final part. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Now it's come full circle. Now you, where you were in the darkness, now you are a light unto others to help make their world more bright. Not to condemn them, be like, look at me, I'm Mr. Bright Shiny. You need to live your lives. You guys need to figure your lives out because you're terrible. No, now you're just that light. You're letting your light shine out to everyone. And you can't help it because it's just who you are. You're not trying to be merciful for some requisite. You're not forgiving to get a reward out of them or to get a response out of them. You're just, hey, even if you want to hate me still, I'm still going to love you. It does make it difficult sometimes for the relationship to be what it could be, because if they are holding those resentment and that grudge, you can't do much against that, you can only love them as much as you can. And if they still want to be hanging on to the past, that's where letting them go, letting them say, okay, listen, I'm not going to have to try and make this what it isn't, but I'm still going to love you as much as you're willing to let me. That's how God is. God is constantly showering us. Our cup is overflowing. God is constantly doing that. And yet we still suffer, because God can only love us. He can only give it unto us freely. And as such, we can only accept it of our own free volition. And if we don't, then, God is willing to let us toil in the darkness insofar as we are willing to then come to our senses and return to Him. But the moment from the second we found ourselves separate, we were redeemed, because God would come running towards us. This man is running, the second he sees us turn. He's always here. He's never separated. But from an allegorical standpoint, He is coming and He is there embracing you, the second you turn. Because again, like He says, blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. They shall be comforted, And we are that light that can bring that comfort, not of our own self, but of Him who has sent us. And He has sent us to do a great will for Him and for others, as those children of God and brothers of Christ unto others, to bring the Christ, that light, to the world, to make a world more bright. All right, folks, I'll see ya. Check me out on my Facebook page on the same thing, Benevolent Wolfpack. I'd love to have you there. It's a great time. Do Jesus Calling every day if I can. And yeah, love to have you folks. The water's fine. Peace.